How can we set up a D3 server to automatically take over for another server in the case of machine failure? Well, this all begins with D3Net Manager. Here we can configure understudy machines. Those are backup servers which will take over for any one of our failed servers. Select understudies and hit the plus button to add in a new machine. You'll need to enter in the machine name, which in this case we'll call understudy. Select OK, and you'll have a machine editor available to you. Sticky this by holding down Control and selecting its header. Now first and foremost, let's change the machine type here to 4x4 Pro minus VFC cards. Then hit A just to zoom into your interface. Now the feed here we leave as none, unlike masters and slaves. This is because the understudy does not require a dedicated feed scene. Instead, we assign to it understudy targets. By hitting the plus button, you'll have the other machines already set up on D3Net available to select. You can have multiple machines assigned as targets, and in doing so, the understudy will monitor those machines across the network, and if they were to fail, the understudy will automatically take over for them. However, I reiterate, it can only ever take over for one machine at any one time, and this will only happen if you configure your failover settings. We have a property called timeout, which by default is disabled. Set this to either 5 or 10 seconds. This is the maximum duration of time it takes for the understudy to take over. Now, although I've configured my machines, we also have to question, how can we route the understudy's outputs through to the master's outputs in the case of machine failure? Well, in this case, we have George, and he's being sent through output 2 of the master. By right-clicking the display head, from the list of properties, we have matrix input. So the question is, which input head of the matrix does head 2 of our master D3 server actually connect to? It could very well be input head 2. If for whatever reason we had multiple matrices on the same network, we would also need to identify each matrix. To do so, before the 2, enter in the matrix number, which in this case could be 1, and separate your 2 digits by a decimal place. Now the input on the matrix needs to be routed through to an output, so select feed properties, and you'll have a matrix outputs field. If we're routing directly 1 to 1, we could have a matrix output of 1.2. Now in the same way, we need to configure output 2 of our understudy. Right-click its display head, and from the list of properties, you'll have a matrix input field. Now in reality, we could very well imagine that head 2 of the understudy is physically connected to another input head on the matrix. Could very well be on matrix 1, input head 6. This now means that if the master were to fail, output 2 of the understudy would take over for the master's second output, and George would continue to be displayed in the real world. Now also, if you right-click feed from the dashboard, you can enter in matrix outputs per feed directly within the editor as well.